There are many reasons why people immigrate. Opportunities, greater access to basic needs, fleeing violence, war, survival. There are external forces that are systemic and powerful. For many people, being able to move at all is a privilege, the legal way at least. In those dire situations, people choose to fight for a better life. I often tiptoe around the fact that my parents are immigrants and crossed the border to Mexico. Not because of shame or embarrassment, but the misconceptions that exist about immigrants. The decision for my loved ones was burdensome, to say the least, leaving behind elements like places of worship, food, loved ones, the dancing, history, traditions. They were all tied to their cultural identity and were left behind. When my parents embarked to the United States, my mother was pregnant with me. They were able to do this through a coyote, or someone that helps people cross the border unlawfully. A truck picked them up from Mexico City to Agua Prieta, Sonora. They then walked 34 hours through the desert without food or anywhere to stop. A car picked them up then took them to Tucson. They anxiously waited a week in an empty house for someone to take them up north to Minnesota and then finally to Chicago. During their excruciatingly long trip, my mother sat inside a hot vehicle, exhausted, nauseated, sore, and swarmed by other people who were in pursuit of the same dream. There are many other factors that make this journey an even more painful one, some of them being sex, geography, and access to resources. Some people must make this agonizing crossing by foot through the monstrous heat and dangerous terrain. With access to drinkable water being limited, one too many people die on their journey. It is common for women to experience sexual violence. It is so common that women take birth control in preparation, hoping there is no need to use it. Imagine anticipating this kind of violence and exploitation of the body. Once people arrive on U.S. soil, the disillusionment settles and an unfamiliar reality trickles in. The American dream evolves. For many undocumented people, this means working your life away. Working till your back aches, feet swell, and hands hurt. When my dad was living in the United States working 70-hour weeks, he'd often talk about how much he missed his family back home. He was heartbroken about not being able to even visit. Oftentimes, my family members had to grieve their family members back home from a distance. My parents preserved a lot of traditional cultural values instead of assimilating. This entailed what a family looks like, what gender roles we occupied, how religion manifested, and how we lived day-to-day life. Due to the unaccustomed experience of most social structures, I distrusted them. We didn't know how to navigate them. My dad told me how he started working at Chipotle, and he didn't know any English at the time. They put him out on the line, and he was utterly confused. Thankfully, he stayed and learned the language. He even got promoted years later, thanks to his leadership skills and work ethic. He threw himself in there fearlessly and often taught himself skills through YouTube. When my mother was signing me up for school, there were no Spanish-speaking translators at the time. We didn't know how to ask where the bathroom was. I remember being lost in that building. My mother's trembling hand and look of desperation. She was unable to communicate, much less advocate for herself. My parents have always worked with honor and dignity. After they'd complain about their body aches, headaches, and stress, they'd finish with this sentence: Gracias a Dios tenemos trabajo. Meaning, thanks to God, we have a job. I found their endurance incredible, even infuriating. Unfortunately, some employers take advantage of this tenacity and necessity. There's countless of stories of employers overworking and mistreating their employers. Living this way, you give up rest, connection, the ability to take care of your family, and the energy to take care of yourself. When my dad was working in the restaurant industry, he'd come back so tired I would rarely see him. He changed to construction, he'd come back beat. Sometimes it would take months for him to get paid. My mother would come back with her hands cracked from all the cleaning products. Till this day, she works 16-hour days on weekends. My grandmother often worked through her illnesses without access to any medical insurance. When I asked my dad how they were able to do this, leave their country, cross the border, and adapt to a different one, he said, we didn't really have a choice. My hometown, Waukegan, Illinois, is made up of a third of immigrants. There are businesses led by immigrant families, daycare centers, restaurants, landscaping businesses, and so much potential. This is a place that needs to be cultivated and empowered with education in a way that is cognizant of our beautiful cultures. They created their own spaces as a means for adaptation. Imagine all that would be possible in a place with such distinct backgrounds and diverse skill sets. I recognize that being in a country where having certain rights and privileges is incredibly monumental in contrast to how some of my loved ones lived undocumented. Things that we take for granted: insurance and ID, access to medical, insurance, and work, and then even the ability to plan ahead, because you never know. In me lived a constant fear that one day my loved ones could be deported and all our lives will be uprooted. Most of my peers don't understand the experience of being the eldest daughter of Mexican immigrant parents. I didn't even consider myself as an American in my upbringing. I grew up translating documents, doctor's appointments, taking care of my family, and feeling immense pressure to attain the American dream. This would demonstrate that it was worth it for my parents to cross the border. They looked to me to navigate this world. It was a weird dynamic in which sometimes I had more ability than my own parents sometimes. To my children of immigrants in low-income backgrounds, we are in between two very distinct worlds. However, we don't fully belong to either one. Being Mexican American sometimes means that there is a disconnect to our parents. My dad didn't get why I was crying so hard. When I was getting bullied in school, he said, just stand up for yourself. That is because in their childhood, they had different problems. Our pain looked very different. It created a distance between my parents and I. I carried this guilt, feeling like the reason why they could not live fulfilling lives, an immense pressure in order to repay my debt. However, this struggle is fruitful. It ignites empathy unlike anything else. Ni de aquí, ni de allá, not from here nor from there. That is how my entire life has felt. Like a huge transition for the rest of my lineage. It warrants so much inner healing and healing of your own kin. My longing is that people attain more that they could ever dream of: opportunities, self-fulfillment, community, and a household that doesn't bear the consequence of all unresolved generational trauma. I want people to feel empowered to share their story tonight. I want outsiders to be open, present, and patient to listen. Be curious, ask questions. It ignites empathy unlike anything else. I thank my parents for allowing me to share their story tonight. And I thank you for allowing me to share an important piece of me. Thank you.